Hi, this is Scott Garibay. Count it all joy. I am really ready to celebrate today. What I want to talk to you about today is Dungeons & Dragons. I want to talk to you about Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And first and foremost, we're going to celebrate the brand new Sophia Lillis, Doric, D&D Beyond stat block. Because it is a historical event. It has never happened in the history of all tabletop role-playing games. So there's a lot of history happening. So Dungeons & Dragons is about to have its second American blockbuster. The first one was a failure, right? It was structured as an American blockbuster, and it was released as an American blockbuster, but it didn't achieve commercial success as an American blockbuster. And now we're going to have our second American blockbuster attempt, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And man, I am so excited. It is really exciting because and the reality is Dungeons & Dragons is making its second attempt at what literally no other tabletop role-playing game in the world has ever accomplished, which is an American blockbuster release. Okay, it's never been, and D&D is moving into its second, right? And so that's historic in itself, right? Dungeons & Dragons is making history twice, where no other tabletop role-playing game has ever even made an attempt, right? So, so Dungeons & Dragons forward, the OSR and the Indies back, right? But what's really exciting is the Sophia Lillis Doric stat block on D&D Beyond. So why is this important? Why is this like super historically important? Well, it's Fortnite and $1 billion Bravo, right? Dungeons & Dragons is not an OSR. It's not an indie game. It doesn't play at the garage band. Like, is this an amateur product? Is this a professional product? Sometimes you can't really tell with an OSR and an indie, and it probably is an amateur, masquerading as a professional product. But Dungeons & Dragons, it's real products, right? And so one of the things is like Fortnite does this, right? So there's a Spider-Man skin and there's a Tom Holland skin, and you can get and you were able to get the regular generic Spider-Man skin. You could earn it in the battle pass, but the Tom Holland, the Hollywood skin of Spider-Man with Tom Holland's face had to be purchased because it was special, right? And that's the Sophia Lillis Doric, right? What's incredible is look on D&D Beyond, if you can. Do you still have a subscription? Do you still have an undeleted account? If you supported Dungeons & Dragons through this, you do, thank goodness, and you can celebrate rather than trying to hide the fact that you deleted your account and you lost all the stuff you had claimed previously. But count it all joy. Count it all joy. This is a celebration, right? Not a castigation. Okay. All right. So if you go on D&D Beyond, right, you will see right now, weeks before the movie release, right, the Sophia Lillis Doric stat block, and you could see that the piece of art is not stylized in any way. It is very descriptively illustrated, and it has Sophia Lillis body shape. It's the same weight. It's the same height as she appears in the movies. Literally, her cheekbones, her eyes, her hair, everything looks exactly like Sophia Lillis' Doric. And this is not a small thing. This means that this movie had to be structured to say, hey, the product is the world. The product is the world. The product is the world, right? So basically, this movie, they're saying, hey, you are going to go to Target. So here's the experience they're building, right? You go in and you've never engaged with Dungeons & Dragons. You go and you see the movie, the action movie Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, because you want to see an action movie at the beginning of the American blockbuster season, March, right? And so you go see it with no connection to Dungeons & Dragons. You're like, that was really cool, man, and all those characters did all those great things. Then you're in Target and you literally see the D&D Essentials box and you're like, I got $25, done, and you're in. And when you open up that Essentials box, right, you will see Neverwinter Forest, which the stat block says Sophia Lillis' Doric, right, who looks exactly like Sophia Lillis, Sophia Lillis, which means that her work in the Nancy Drew film, her work in the It movies is being referenced in Forgotten Realms, right? It's saying, hey, when you think about Doric, we bought everything. We bought the likeness, right? I'm an evangelical Christian. I'm made in the image of God, right? My value as a human is higher than that of an animal, higher than that of an angel, right? And Sophia Lillis's Doric, right, is more valuable as a non-player character than Lord Baccharis, who had, what does Lord Baccharis look like? Who knows? And who cares, right? As a dungeon master, you can make him look like anything you want, right? But when you describe Doric in your Essentials book, when you're running Essentials kit, right? You can go, oh, we're in the Neverwinter Woods. Hey, here's the wood elf enclave where the wood elf enclave adopted Doric, right? And then you could describe Doric, and you don't have to and the thing is, the product is the world. They're saying that these non-player characters have literally the exact same physical description as the actors, right? Saying the product is the world. Why does that matter? Because D&D has been doing it for a long time. They're saying, you bought Dungeons & Dragons. You didn't just buy Dungeons & Dragons. We made canon that Dominaria is connected to Forgotten Realms, and that way, when you think about Magic the Gathering, the product, we want you to think of every time you see any Magic the Gathering card, we want you to remember that Magic and the Magic worlds and the Dungeons & Dragons worlds are connected. They are not separate. Dominaria, Arcavios, Liliana, Planeswalkers, it's completely permeable, right? And they've gone down this road. They're like, hey, Funko Pops has 1,000 worlds. Let's make a scale miniature exactly the same and make sure that everybody knows when you think of Funko Pop and any character they have ever made, you can immediately place them into your Dungeons & Dragons game because they are a scale miniature at exactly the same scale as the canon Dritz Do'Urden and all the canon D&D Funko Pop that will serve as miniatures. And there's even Funko Pop terrain that can be used, right? And it's incredible. And they're saying the product is the world. The product is the world. The product is the world. And taking this deeper than anyone ever has. And they're doing it right now, right? And they're saying, okay, hey, here right now, you can buy a $500 Lord of the Rings Rivendell set. And in 1 month, you will connect your Dungeons & Dragons official canon terrain, canon monsters, canon minifigs, and they can walk into the Friends set, and they can walk into the Harry Potter sets, and they can walk into the Marvel sets, and they can walk into the DC sets, and all of the terrain and all of the miniature minifigs are all the same, because when you think of the Lego world, we want you to think of Dungeons & Dragons and understand that the product is the world, the product is the world, the product is the world, and Dungeons & Dragons is the most far out, the most advanced celebration of capitalism that has ever happened, right? Because the product is the world. And they were like, and they were also saying, you can't make a Dungeons & Dragons movie and expect that those products Marvel is like, oh, well, when you play your video game, we want you to know you're playing the Marvel, that you have the Marvel Iron Man. You don't have the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man. And D&D is like, no, man, we have been mixing IRL and D&D for decades. And when you think about Doric, we want you to think about Sophia Lillis. She is Doric. Doric is her, right? And we want you to understand that her non-player character is the same, right? It's her image, right? And she's more valuable than Lord Baccharis, right? And she's certainly more valuable than anything you're going to ever find in any OSR game, any indie game, or any competitor game of Dungeons & Dragons, because Dungeons & Dragons is saying our non-player characters are going to bear the literal Hollywood image brought by Hollywood power, right? So it's really exciting. It's incredibly exciting. And if you're on the Dungeons & Dragons side, if you're a D&D advocate and not an OSR or an indie advocate, you have a reason to celebrate because you have special things coming, right? What does the OSR and the indie have? This is D&D surging forward and accomplishing more than the OSR or the indie can even dream of, right? And it's really exciting. It's very exciting. All right. But, all right, let's talk about Doric. First of all, she's an orphan, okay? Why is she an orphan? Gary Gygax. So Dungeons & Dragons 5e is the greatest celebration of Gary Gygax's legacy that exists in any game today, right? And you will find that Doric is an orphan to call back to Gary Gygax's inclusion and progressivism, right? He made sure that D&D had a female CEO in 1986 and all the way through 1997, and was the most progressive tabletop role-playing gaming company. TSR was the most progressive tabletop role-playing gaming company in the world. He made sure that the 1980s cartoon showed that females were welcome, and young people were welcome, and black people were welcome, and smashed down every barrier to gender and race for anybody. It made sure that everybody knew that Dungeons & Dragons was a celebration of inclusion and progressivism. He then made sure that Dungeons & Dragons, for the entirety of his life, he pushed forward Dungeons & Dragons and made sure that his legacy was saying, hey, Dungeons & Dragons is about provisioning every human on this planet with an identity tool that will allow them to go against every identity boundary they face. Anybody who tells them that your gender is set, that your preferences are set, that your species is set, he smashed all of that and said, your identity is what you choose, and was decades ahead of people who are like, gender is a construct. Gary Gygax was saying it in 1974, right? He's saying your entire identity is a construct, and I will give you 100 of them if you're a player, and I'll give you 1,000 of them if you're a dungeon master. And he was for inclusion and progressivism. And so Doric is a tiefling druid, Circle of the Moon, right? And that's important too. Circle of the Moon is there and saying this ties directly into the player's handbook, right? This American blockbuster Hollywood film ties directly, right, into the player's handbook that you hold in your hand right now. You will find Doric's home on the first map you encounter when you buy a D&D 5e Essentials kit, right? And saying the product is the world. The product is the world. The product is the world, right? Dungeons & Dragons is the most expansive celebration of capitalism that has ever happened, right? And the Dungeons & Dragons world is products and merchandise and rules and imagination and beautiful and unprecedented and setting the bar of quality, excitement, inclusion, all of these things. So she is a tiefling druid, Circle of the Moon, raised by wood elves, okay? So, and that goes right back to Gary's, like he's saying, hey, these wood elves don't have anything to do with tieflings, right? They have every reason to fear them, but they responded with love. And this and Doric's orphan background is a specific celebration of Gary Gygax, right? In addition to that, right, it goes further, and it's saying the product is the world, the product is the world, the product is the world. The owlbear is right there. Right there. It's so exciting, right? So in the stat block it says Doric, right, can wild shape, so she can turn into any beast, or an owlbear. And it completely, addresses all of the, people are like, hey, druids can't turn into an owlbear, right? And Dungeons & Dragons is like, in this official D&D canon material, we will answer your question. You are correct. A druid cannot turn into an owlbear. Doric has an ability that is specific and that is specifically tied to her stat block. The ability is that Doric can wild shape into any beast or an owlbear, right? And then gives specific rules on exactly what happened with her hit points and all of it, right? And it's very exciting. The only thing I thought was really interesting is it did look like she keeps her own hit points. She doesn't get the hit points of the new creature, which I thought was interesting, right? So you have that, which that's very interesting. But she can also transform into an owlbear, and that is specific to her. So it allows it to be powerful and exciting in the film, but it doesn't confuse people and say, oh, druids can turn into owlbears, right? And so it literally fixes the objections that kind of deep in the weeds Dungeons and Dragons fans were concerned about, right? And so it is really, really cool, and it is really spectacular. And we got lore, and we got the exact stats, and it's all in the package of Sophia Lillis, and that's not a small thing, right? She's a Hollywood ingenue, right? There's a good chance she's going to win an Oscar someday, right? She is incredibly talented, right? And when she goes up on stage and collects that Oscar, right? D&D fans are going to go, that's Doric. That's exciting. That is exciting. And the reason why I celebrate that and why I'm so excited is you're never going to get that from OSC. You're never going to get that from DCC. You are never going to get that from Pathfinder, right? There's never going to be Hollywood stars attached to any of those products, right? Now, Shadow Dark RPG is coming out, right? It's the OSR's premier product intended to replace D&D. Will it have a chance of garnering Hollywood, the kind of Hollywood weight that Dungeons and Dragons has? It's possible. It's possible. LCD is doing her best, and I actually think the only real blocker is the black and white art. I feel it really brings that product to the point where you're like amateur, professional. I don't know. Like black and white art looks like a real amateur, move. And so this really is a huge surge for Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a hit. It's a hit for OSR and indies saying, where are you guys? We're making our second attempt at a film. You guys the entire industry, every competitor combined is not passing us. We're passing you again. Entire OSR and indie TTBRG companies, all of you combined have done. We're doing our second attempt, and you've still done zero, right? And so it's a huge forward. So thank you for letting me celebrate this with you. I am super excited. I'm so excited about these brand new stat blocks and this historic moment where this has never happened before, right? Where a non-player character is put directly into the default setting of a tabletop role-playing game, and the literal Hollywood images are being used in the illustration, right? Saying when you describe this non-player character, you make sure that you bring, the voice energy, this character is this person, right? Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, right? Sophia Lillis is Doric, and this is brought to you by Dungeons & Dragons, and it has never even been attempted by any other game in the world, and that is incredibly exciting to me. Truly historic. Every single word is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get into the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.